We are talking 203Ks.
Okay, picture this. You are driving through your dream neighborhood.
Yeah.
Maybe it's got those tree-lined streets, the good school district, the whole package. But every time you pull up Zillow, the prices just, they make you want to cry.
Yeah.
They are completely out of your league. Every house is turnkey, polished, and just so expensive.
It's the classic barrier to entry, right?
Yeah.
You're just priced out of the finished product.
But then you spot it, the ugly duckling, the one I'm talking about, the lawn is a jungle, paint's peeling off in sheets, maybe there's a weird smell.
Yeah.
It is a total disaster. But the price is actually doable. The problem is you don't have $50,000 in cash sitting in your checking account to turn that disaster into a home.
And that is where most people just keep driving. I mean, they have the vision, but they don't have the capital.
Exactly. But what if I told you there's a cheat code? A way to buy that nightmare house and get the bank to pay for the renovations, all rolled into one single monthly payment. Today, we are doing a deep dive into the FHA 203K loan.
Yeah.
And we aren't just looking at the bank brochures. We have pulled hours of testimony for people who actually lived through it. Through the dust, the noise, all the chaos.
The sources for this one are fantastic. We have Damian Miles, who's a serious developer now. We have a couple, Lashai and Milan Williams, who navigated this while juggling grad school and side hustles.
Right.
And then we have the Downing brothers, Anthony and Anton.
I love the Downing brothers.
They're great. They're these twin firefighters from Chicago who turned this loan process into a whole TV career. But what's fascinating is that none of these people describe the 203K as just a loan. They all call it a gateway.
A gateway to what?
To generational wealth, to actually changing your family's financial future. But, and I need to be really clear about this up front, it is not a free lunch.
No.
It's stressful, it's complicated, and if you don't know what you're doing, it can go off the rails fast.
We are going to hear about some absolute disasters today, especially when we get to the contractors. But we're also going to talk about the payoff. I mean, we're talking about profit checks that change lives. So let's get into it. What exactly is this thing? Because when I hear FHA, I just think of a standard government loan.
So the mission of this deep dive is to unpack the mechanics of the 203K. In the simplest terms, it's a renovation loan. Normally, if you want to buy a house that's falling apart, say it's missing a kitchen or the furnace is broken, a regular bank won't lend you the money.
Right.
They'll say the house isn't habitable.
Right, because if you default, they're stuck with a house nobody can even live in.
Precisely. The 203K solves that problem. It allows you to borrow money for the purchase of the house, plus the money for the repairs, all in one loan. And the magic number is 3.5%. You put 3.5% down on the total projected value.
That is wild leverage. So if the house is $100,000 and the repairs are $50,000, I'm not putting down huge cash for the repairs.
No. You're putting down 3.5% of the total $150,000 package. It lets you punch way above your weight class.
Wow.
And the best example of how powerful this leverage can be comes from the Downing brothers. Their story starts way back in 2008.
The Great Recession.
A brutal time. Anthony Downing was in a really tough spot. He owned a condo in Chicago, but the market had just crashed. The value tanked, and he was underwater. He was facing foreclosure.
Oof. I feel like a lot of people remember that panic. So he's about to lose his home. How does he pivot from losing a home to
This is where it gets crazy.
buying a bigger one?
He pulled off this maneuver that was incredibly risky, but also so strategic. He negotiated a short sale on his condo.
Okay, pause there. For anyone who didn't live through the 2008 crash, what does a short sale actually mean?
So a short sale is when you go to the bank and say, look, I owe you $200,000, but this condo is only worth $150 now. I can't pay you. You can either let me sell it for $150 and you take the loss, or you can foreclose on me and we both suffer.
So the bank takes less than they're owed. That has to just wreck your credit score, right?
It absolutely does. It's a major black mark. But here is where Anthony was so clever. He knew his credit was about to take a massive hit once that sale closed. So while the short sale was processing in that tiny window where his credit was still technically okay, he applied for a 203K loan on a new property.
Wait, he's selling one house at a loss and buying a huge single-family home at the same time?
He was threading the needle. He bought a distressed gray stone property in the historic Bronzeville neighborhood. Because the 203K is based on the future value of the home, he could secure the loan, move in, and by the time the short sale hit his credit report, He was already safe in his new house.
That is incredible. It's like playing 4D chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
It is. And it shows that this isn't just for first-time buyers with perfect profiles. It can be a recovery tool. But we need to clarify something, because when I was looking through the notes, the sources kept mentioning two different flavors of this loan.
Yeah, so that. A limited and a standard, what's the difference? Is one just for, like, cheaper houses?
Not exactly cheaper houses, but smaller projects. The limited 203K, used to be called the streamlined, is for when you just need cosmetic work.
Okay.
Maybe you need new appliances, some painting, maybe refinish the floors. Historically, the cap for repairs was around $35,000, though that limit changes.
So that's for a lipstick renovation.
Right. Damian Miles, one of our sources, he used the limited. He was doing a relatively simple rehab, but then you have the standard. This is the heavy artillery.
The gut job.
The gut job. If you are moving load-bearing walls, if you are adding a room, or if the repair is just really expensive, you have to use the standard 203K. Lashai and Milan, the couple from Philly, they bought a row house that needed everything. New plumbing, new electric, new layout. They had to go standard.
Okay, so we know what the loan is. We know it can save you from financial ruin if you're smart. But here's the part that really stood out to me. You can't just walk into a bank and ask for this, can you? It seems like you need a very specific team.
You really do. The sources use this great analogy of a basketball starting lineup. And I love this because if you have a weak player in the starting five, you are going to lose the game.
I love a good sports metaphor. So walk me through the roster. Who do we need on the court?
Okay, so first you have your point guard. That's your realtor. They run the offense. They find the house. Then you have the shooting guard. That's your lender. They score the points by getting you the money.
Okay.
Then you have the small forward. This is a special role in the 203K world called the consultant.
The consultant. I've never heard of that for a normal house purchase.
You wouldn't need one. But in a 203K, the consultant is the swingman between the bank and the contractor. Their job is to inspect the house, write up the work plan, and tell the bank, yes, this is a valid repair. They protect the bank's money.
Got it.
Then you have the power forward. The contractor does the heavy lifting, the dirty work. And finally, the center is the title company, protecting the rim or, your legal interest in the property.
That makes perfect sense. But here's the thing that confused me. Usually when I think about buying a house, the first person I call is a realtor. But the Downing brothers said that is the wrong move.
It is completely the wrong move for a 203K, they say. Do not start with the point guard. Start with the shooting guard. Start with the lender.
Why? Wouldn't a realtor know which lenders to use?
You would hope so. But the reality is most real estate agents hate 203K loans.
They hate them.
They despise them. They take longer to close, maybe 60 to 90 days instead of 30. There is way more paperwork. If you call a random agent and say, I want to do a 203K, they will likely try to talk you out of it, or they just won't know how to do it. You need to find a lender who specializes in this first.
We actually saw what happens when you don't do that with Lashai and Milan, didn't we? Their story about the lenders gave me anxiety.
It was a mess. A perfect example of why the roster matters. They went through 3 different loan officers.
3?
3. The first one seemed okay, but then passed them off. The second one, and this is where it gets bad, ran their credit repeatedly.
Like hard pulls.
Multiple hard pulls. Every time a lender checks your credit for a mortgage, it can dip your score a little. Usually, if you do it all at once, it counts as one inquiry. But this dragged on. Their credit score dropped so much that they no longer qualified for the loan with that lender.
That is heartbreaking. You are trying to build wealth, and the professional you hired is actually destroying your credit.
It's malpractice, honestly. They had to scramble to find a third lender who could work with their new, lower score. And the takeaway here is that once they found the right team, they rated them 10 out of 10. But you have to filter out the generalists. You need specialists.
So you need a shooting guard who can actually shoot. But let's move to the power forward, the contractor. Because if the lender story gave me anxiety, the contractor stories in these testimonies are just straight up nightmares.
This is universally the biggest pain point. Every single source we looked at had major issues with their contractor.
Let's talk about Damian Miles. He had this situation he called cloak and dagger. What on earth does that mean?
It sounds like a spy novel, doesn't it? So Damian interviews a contractor. The guy is licensed. He's professional, shakes Damian's hand. Damian thinks, great, I've got my power forward.
Signed and delivered.
But then construction starts. And the guy he hired, nowhere to be found, a completely different crew shows up.
Who were they?
It was an unlicensed crew. The licensed contractor was doing what's called piggybacking. He was basically renting out his license to some other guys so they could get the job, and he was taking a cut without doing any of the work.
That feels incredibly illegal, or at least dangerous.
It's very dangerous, and it's dangerous because of how the money flows. In a 203K, you, the home buyer, you never touch the renovation money. It sits in an escrow account. The bank pays the contractor directly. So Damien is seeing his money go to this ghost contractor, but the people hammering the nails are total strangers.
That is terrifying. And then you have Lashai and Milan. They rated their first contractor a 1 out of 10.
Yeah, that's a failing grade. Their issue was different. Their contractor was willing to work, but he had thin pockets.
Thin pockets, meaning he was broke.
Meaning he didn't have the capital to float the project. And this brings us to a critical mechanic called the draw system. This is where most 203K projects die.
Break that down for us, because I think most people assume you just give the contractor a check for materials to get started.
In a normal renovation, yeah, you give them 50% up front. But with the 203K, the bank is paranoid. They will not give the contractor a dime until work is verified.
Ah.
So the contractor has to buy the lumber, pay the crew, and do the demolition with their own money. Then the consultant comes out, inspects it, and tells the bank to release a payment check.
I see the problem. If the contractor doesn't have $10,000 in the bank to buy the lumber,
then the work never starts. And if the work doesn't start, the bank never releases the check. It's a death spiral. That's what happened to Lashai and Milan. Their contractor expected a check on day one. When he realized he had to front the costs, he froze.
so the power forward just walked off the court,
Exactly. The game stopped. They had to fire him.
which is stressful enough. But then you have a half-demolished house and no contractor. How do they fix it?
Lashai went into full crisis mode. She sent an email blast to every contractor she could find and eventually found a large national company. And that's the lesson. For a 203K, you can't hire the guy who works out of his pickup truck and lives paycheck to paycheck. You need a business with a real balance sheet.
Okay, so we've got the team. We've fired the bad contractor. Now let's talk money.
Yeah.
Because Damian Miles dropped a specific number that I think is really important. We always hear 3.5% down, but what does that look like in real dollars?
Damien remembers it down to the penny. $8,487.37.
That's it, $8,500 to buy a house and renovate it.
That was his total cash to close. Down payment, closing costs, everything. He controlled a property that eventually gained $30,000 in equity just from the renovation, all for an entry fee of less than $8,500.
That is attainable. That's a tax refund and some diligent saving. But Damian also warned us about something else, the Oops Fund.
The reserve fund. You cannot go into this with $0 left in your savings account.
Why not? I thought the loan covered everything.
It covers the planned repairs. But old houses, they have secrets. Damien had a home inspection that said his HVAC system was fine. The inspector signed off on it.
Let me guess. It wasn't fine.
The moment they started tearing down walls, the HVAC died. The 203K budget was already locked in with the bank. He couldn't go back and ask for more money. He had to write a check for $7,500 out of his own pocket to replace the system.
Ouch. So if he hadn't had that $7,500, the project would have just stalled.
Exactly. You need a safety net. But, and this is my favorite part of the deep dive, there is a financial tool that Lashai and Milan used that almost sounds too good to be true. It's called mortgage payment rolling.
Okay, I read this in the notes and I was skeptical. It sounds like a trap. Tell me how this works.
So imagine you buy this gut job house. You can't live in it. There's no plumbing. So you have to stay in your apartment and pay rent, but you also have to pay the mortgage on the new house.
Paying double housing costs. That's why people don't do this. They can't afford rent and a mortgage at the same time.
Correct. But the FHA allows you to finance up to 6 months of mortgage payments into the loan itself.
Wait, explain that. Does the bank just forgive the payments?
No, nothing is forgiven. They take the cost of those 6 mortgage payments and add it to your total loan balance. So the bank is basically paying itself out of the money you borrowed.
Okay, so I'm paying interest on my mortgage payments for the next 30 years.
You are. That's the catch. You are increasing your debt. It's not free money. But it solves the cash flow problem. It allowed Lashai and Milan to stay in their apartment for 6 months without writing a single check for the house while it was being built.
Okay, I get it now. It costs you equity in the long run, but it keeps you from going bankrupt in the short run.
Exactly. It buys you time.
So we've survived the contractor, we've paid the closing costs, we rolled the mortgage. Now comes the aha moment. what happens on the other side. Because for these guests, it wasn't just about having a nice place to sleep. It changed their whole careers.
This is why they call it the gateway. Look at Damian Miles. He didn't just get a house. He watched the contractor work. He actually did the demolition himself to save money. Fun fact, he found out later the contractor kept the demo money anyway, which is a whole other story.
Of course he did.
But that experience sparked something. Damian realized, I can do this. He studied for the contractor license test. He said it was an open book test with like 58 questions. He passed it. Now, instead of hiring shady contractors, he is the developer. He runs out acquisitions and W&M development. He pivoted from being the consumer to the producer.
That is a massive shift. And what about the Downing brothers? They sold their first 203K project, right?
They did. And this is the number you need to remember. They walked away with a profit check of $77,000.
$77,000.
Yeah.
For most people, that is a year's salary.
Or two. And they didn't go buy a Porsche. They used that 77 grand to buy apartment buildings. That portfolio grew. They wrote a book called Visual Guide to Real Estate, and they landed a show on HGTV. That one 203K loan was the seed corn for a media empire.
I also really like Damian's strategy for what he does with the houses now. He's not just flipping them, he's renting them to students, but he does it differently.
He calls it the red carpet treatment. Most student housing is, well, it's gross. Damian realized that if he wanted to charge a premium $825 a room, he had to offer a premium product.
What does that look like?
He puts a 32-inch TV in every room, a desk, a printer. He hires a cleaning service for the common areas. He treats the students like family. During COVID, he was dropping off masks and hand sanitizer.
That's smart. He realizes his actual customers are the parents who want to know their kid is safe.
Exactly. And Lashai and Milan, they are still in the thick of it, but they have immediate equity in a gentrifying North Philly neighborhood. And keep in mind, Lashai is getting her PhD in pediatric neuropsychology while doing this.
That's a casual PhD on the side, no big deal.
And Milan has a side hustle selling Captain Grilko sauce. The point is, these are normal, busy people. They aren't hedge fund managers. The 203K allowed them to step into the real estate game without having millions in the bank.
So let's wrap this up. What is the big takeaway for the listener who is sitting in their car right now, maybe driving past a boarded-up house?
The Downing brothers use an analogy that I think is perfect. They say real estate is just Monopoly.
The board game.
The board game. You buy the raw land, you put a house on it, then you trade up for a hotel. The mechanics are the same. The 203K is just the tool that lets you buy that first greenhouse.
But it's not easy. I think we've established that. The vetting process for the contractor is hell. The paperwork is thick.
It is difficult, but I want to leave the listener with a provocative thought. Most people look for a turnkey home to avoid stress. They want to walk in, put their furniture down, and relax. But these stories suggest that stress, specifically the stress of managing a renovation, is actually where the money is made.
What do you mean by that?
If you buy a finished house, you are paying the seller for their stress. You are paying a premium for the work they managed. When you do the 203K, you are taking on that burden. You are the project manager. And in exchange for that headache, you are capturing that $77,000 profit margin.
That is a powerful way to look at it.
So the question is, are you willing to be uncomfortable for 6 months if it means changing your financial trajectory forever? Or are you willing to pay $77,000 for the privilege of not dealing with a contractor?
Are you buying peace of mind, or are you building equity?
That's the choice.
Well, as the Downing brothers' father used to tell them, do it right and do it right the first time. Thanks for diving deep with us today. See you next time.